Hi everyone, welcome to my third lecture, how to solve questions of VA and RC, insights and tricks 01. I'm Anupam. Stay connected, download Unacademy app, install it, go to plus, cat, subscribe. You get these 5 offerings, anything more than 6 months, tens. Using Saxena 10 as a code, you get 10% discount. Hi everybody, very good morning. How are you all doing? So today we'll say bye-bye to PowerPoint presentation. We'll say bye-bye to any sort of theory or any sort of yarn or any sort of strategy or why you should study reading comprehension. Nothing of that sort. We'll just solve question. Okay. So here is a question paper from a very reputed management test, entrance test in India, and we'll try and solve questions, a few questions out of this particular question paper. Let's read this passage first of all. And before that, we read the question as well. Read the following discussion passage and provide an appropriate answer for the questions 44 to 47 that follow. So, reading question properly, completely with patience is also very much required. Of the several features of the Toyota production system that have been widely studied, most important is the mode of governance of the shop floor at Toyota. Work and interrelations between workers are highly scripted in extremely detailed operating procedures that have to be followed rigidly without any deviation at Toyota. Despite such rule-bound rigidity, however, Toyota does not become a command control system. It is able to retain the character of a learning organization. So what idea do we get from the first paragraph? That although Toyota has very rigid, very detailed operating procedure rule books in place, Toyota has not become a very centralized or a very controlled system. It is still flexible enough to make room for uh, other ideas, to make room for productivity and improvement if required. And it retains the character of a learning organization, an organization which is constantly learning. So this is a gist from the first paragraph. Next paragraph. In fact, many observers characterize it as a community of scientists carrying out several small experiments simultaneously. The design of the operating procedure is the key. Every principle must find an expression in the operating procedure. That is, how it has an effect on the domain of action. Workers on shop floor, often in teams, design the operating procedure jointly with the supervisor through a series of hypotheses that are proposed and validated or refuted through experiments in action. The rigid and detailed operating procedure is specification throws up problems of the very minute kind, while its while its resolution leads to a reframing of the procedure and its specifications. This intertemporal change or flexibility of the specification or operating procedure is done at the lowest level of organization, that is closest to the site of. Now, what is it saying that the workers who are working on in the at the ground level, at the assembly line level, they have freedom of designing the the procedure with their supervisor based on their convictions, thoughts and beliefs, and they keep on improving upon it, they keep on changing upon it, and they keep on making it better day in and day out. It happens. So this changes, this design is specification or the creation of operating uh, procedure is done at the very grassroots level, at the lowest level, at the lowest level of the tier where people are actually working and not at the top management level. Next paragraph. One implication of this arrangement is that system design can no longer be rationally optimal and standardized across the organization. It is quite common to find different work norms in contiguous assembly lines. What are contiguous assembly lines? Assembly lines which are just physically placed after one another. They are not very far away. They are just one after the another. Still, we can find very different work norms in each of them. Why? Next line. Because each might have faced a different set of problems and devised different countermeasures to tackle it. Very interesting, you know. Design of the coordinating process that essentially imposes the discipline that is required in large scale complex manufacturing systems is therefore customized to variations in man machine context of the site of the action. It evolves through numerous points of negotiation throughout the organization. It implies then that the higher levels of the hierarchy do not exercise the power of the fiat in setting work rules. For such work rules are no longer a standard set across the whole organization. So what they're saying, that the same thing which was said in the earlier, they're sort of explained it why. Since the problem faced by different teams, different assembly lines are different, and they choose different solutions to solve them. Therefore, the processes are customized at the site level, and they sort of are done with an intent to manage the man-machine interaction which is taking place. Okay, so the very higher level of the hierarchy, say somebody sitting at the CEO, president, AVP, vice president, associate vice president, director, assistant general manager, senior manager, they do not sort of interfere there. So they do not exercise powers of setting work rules. Okay? Because there is no standard set across the whole organization. Last paragraph. It might be interesting to go through the basic Toyota philosophy that underlies its system designing practices. The notion of the ideal production in Toyota embraces the following: the ability to deliver just in time or on demand customer order in exact specification demanded in batch size of 1, and hence an infinite proliferation of variants, models, and a specification, defect free, without wastage of material, labor, energy, or motion, in a safe, physically and emotionally fulfilling, productive environment. If you read it carefully, it has all the features of a very flexible setup. You are able to deliver just in time, in exact specification as demanded by the customer, and you can also make one product, one sample, only one piece of this whole specification. Hence you can look at the diversity and the infinite possibilities of variations possible. Okay, that is the agenda. So if you want to create something just in time or on demand, and you also want to create it just one piece if demanded by the right customer, and they pay the right price, and they provide you the right information, yes, Toyota will make such an vehicle for them. So this demands very flexible, very open sort of an work environment where people can modify the work rules so that they can bring in the efficiency. In the last part, it did not embrace the concept of a standardized product that can be cheap by giving up variations. So it did not accept a bulk production approach. We will produce items in bulk, and we will not have any scope for unique items. Preserving the consumption variety was seen, in fact, as one mode of serving society. It is interesting to note that the articulation of the Toyota philosophy was made around roughly the same time that the Fordist system was establishing in the US automotive industry. So around the same time when in US the Ford philosophy was going on, at the same time Toyota was also following its philosophy. So how independent? So it's a nice case study. It's a very oft quoted case study when it's come to the autonomy of the workers at the lowest level. So it's a very oft quoted case. Now questions can also be answered easily, not difficult. Let's go. What can be best defined as the asset which Toyota model of production leverages to give the vast range of models in a defect-free fashion? What is the best asset? A. Large-scale complex manufacturing systems. No, nothing of this sort was said here. B. Intellectual capital of companies management. No, nothing of sort of talking about nothing with respect to intellectual capital of the management. Nothing of that sort was mentioned. Loans taken by the company from banks and financial institutions. No, nothing with respect to finance was. The ability of workers to evolve the solutions to problems. Yes, this was here that workers come here. The second paragraph, if you read, also if you read in the third paragraph, it is quite evidently mentioned that workers at the lowest level who were actually working on the in the assembly lines or in the mechanical floor shop, they had the real power to form the ground rules. The skill and charisma of the top leadership. No, in fact, nothing. In fact, all the things contrary to the top leadership was mentioned, which have been covered in D option. Option D is correct. Which of the following can be defended as a precondition for the Toyota type of production system to work? What is a precondition? As can be best defended as a precondition. So yeah, reading question is also very important. See, reading question and negating the wrong choices, eliminating the wrong choices. A. Existence of workers' union to protect strike. There was no mention of workers' union. It was not required in this case because Toyota's philosophy demanded so many variations and so many combination possible of the features that the entire philosophy was made in the way that workers can be flexible. Existence of powerful management to create unique strategies. No, nothing of this sort was mentioned there. Powerful management, unique strategies, nothing of this sort was mentioned. Cordial worker management relations to have industrial peace. No, nothing with respect to the labor unrest or labor strike was mentioned in this particular piece. High managements it should be high managements, it's possibly should be there here. Involvement towards the problems identified by workers. No, everything contrary to option number D was mentioned. All the ideas mentioned in the passage were contrary to the option D mentioned here. Workers found their own solutions. E. Management's faith in workers' abilities to solve problems in a rigorous manner. Yes. Workers were given complete freedom because management's faith in workers' abilities to solve problems. No? This was mentioned. This was not mentioned there, but we can infer that if management has to allow, they need to have faith workers' ability to solve the problem in this manner, because at the lowest level, at the shop floor level, at the assembly line level, workshop level, workers were given complete freedom. According to their problems, they could make solutions. According to their man-machine interaction and the negotiation which they had within themselves, they could create their own solution. So E makes more sense. 46. Based on the above passage, which of the following statements is best justified? Okay. So we have to read and we have to find which one of the passages best justified. Workers have significant control rights over design of work rules that allow worker skills and ingenuityist creativity. Okay. To continuously search for novel micro solutions using information that often sticks to the local micro context of that work. Now this is most pertinent in the first read itself. This is what said, that workers could create their own solutions at the grassroots level. But still we'll read other options. B says managers have significant control. Now managers, from this first few words we understand that this is not correct, because nothing with respect to managers was mentioned. It was mentioned, however, that workers along with their supervisor made all the decisions at the micro and the grassroots level. So B is incorrect. Only saying managers is not appropriate. It also doesn't match as the jargon mentioned in the jargon and the idea mentioned in the passages. C. Work rules enable the workers to report problems placed at shop floor level to specialized personnels who set up experiments to replicate the conditions. No, nothing of the sort, that workers reported the problem to specialized specialists. This was not mentioned. Workers themselves solved the problems. D. Toyota as an organization has extensive networks with different specialists who are subject matter experts in different fields. Absolutely no. This idea of specialists and SMEs was nowhere mentioned. Toyota's products are extensively tested by customers in simulated conditions before they are released to the market. Nothing with respect to the testing of the products has been. So now we know, even if we have read couple of, so now you can also see that just by reading initial few words, we have understood that B, C, D, E, and are incorrect and A is most correct. In fact, just by looking at A, because A was having nothing contrary to what was mentioned in the passage, and it had the same idea, same method mentioned in the passage, nothing extra was added. We could have marked A without reading B, C, D, and E. But for coming to that level, you need to become very, very confident of how you have understood. So as discussed in the previous class, yes, you have to start making summaries, and you have to start solving more and more reading comprehension. Let's read last question based on this passage. What would be the best defense? Best defense, they're asking. See, the best defense of the work on the different work norms in contiguous assembly lines. Best defense of the different work forms in contiguous. Okay. So how will you defend this different work norms in contiguous? Remember I said what is contiguous? Contiguous is lines means assembly lines which are present one after the other. They are sort of just separated by a wall, or say on a small section, after which each of them appear in a row, like contiguous row houses, one after the other houses are there, similar fashion. Coming to what would be the best defense? Without such variations allowed, rights of manager to design work rules. Again, rights of manager was not mentioned. B. Proscribing standard work norms would prevent Toyota from workers' problem solving ability in resolving different kinds of problems that emerge, thus making it difficult to attain Toyota philosophy. Now, even if you did not understand what is the meaning of proscribe, you must have understood by reading this B option that this is too convoluted and too complicatedly formed option. Something is fishy about this option. However, I will also tell you, proscribing means when you uh, actually tell not to follow something. You do not prescribe it. On the other hand, you condemn it. You tell people not to follow it. So so by not telling, by discouraging is standardized work norms would prevent Toyota. No, it would not prevent Toyota, it would help Toyota actually. So an opposite of what we are trying to say has been mentioned. Okay, so B is again correct because why? Because we somehow knew the meaning of proscribing, and we also had a hunch while reading that this line itself is too convoluted, or too it has too many complexities to be a right answer. We also had a hunch about it. But if you read C, it becomes further clear that if similarities were imposed, rights of workers to experiment with work rules would have made very. If you do not have different work norms, okay, what is the difference for them? That if you impose standard procedures across a company, workers' rights, whatever the rights they had, whatever rights they were given them by the virtue of the Toyota philosophy, wouldn't have made sense, because they wouldn't have the rights of workers to experiment with work rules, would not have resulted in the what we are looking at. So C sort of is the answer, but still we'll read the D&E. Standardization of work rules is only justified when the investments in plants are huge. Nothing of this sort has been said. We can leave it here itself. See, any idea which has not been mentioned, we can immediately drop it off. Any idea which is contrary to the ideas being mentioned, we can immediately drop it off by reading the initial couple of lines only. With option E, with standardization process, rights of workers and design of work rules would make sense. Now this is ulta. If you, this is opposite of whatever we were discussing. Since that if we sort of bring in a common procedure for the entire company, rights of the workers in design of work rules have made sense. It is not correct, because only if you give them freedom, then only the rights of workers in design of work rules make sense. E is also incorrect. Answer is very clearly. Let's try and solve a few more questions. Although we have not discussed questions like these, but let's solve them because they are not very difficult. It's all related to common sense. Okay, we need a little bit of vocabulary knowledge here. Author has his composition to the best of his, yet listen to it with the sympathetic souls. Author has honed his composition to the best of his insights. So you provide an insight, you provide final detail about something. Insight is a final detail. Also, you hone a skill. You do not hone a composition. You can refine it. Refine will be better here. Polished. Author has polished his composition to the best of his intellect, yet listen to it with a sympathetic mind. O noble souls. So intellect and noble is correct in second and fourth blank, but polished in mind, because sympathy is more is a sort of an emotion. So I think it is more of related to your heart than of mind. So you're looking at how we're managing it. Then polished to the best of his mind. C says polished his composition to the best of his mind. Yet listen to it with a sympathetic intellect. Intellect doesn't have sympathy. Intellect uh, is your is refers to your intelligence, not your emotions. Author has refined his composition. Yeah, refined is correct. That he has sort of sharpened the edges. He or she has sort of used proper words. He or she has changed the expressions. He or she has used proper synonyms of the words required wherever there was smoothing of rhyme, rhythm. Okay, uh, where the smoothing of the text is required, that has been done. It has been made better and better. Okay, has refined his composition to the best of his ingenuity. Okay, ingenuity means again the creativity. Yet listen to it with a sympathetic heart, O righteous souls. So this makes sense. Let's still read E. Refined. The author has refined his composition to the best of his thoughts. Best of his thoughts would not fit in here. We don't refine something with the basis of our thoughts. We refine something on the to the best of our knowledge, creativity. It's a composition, so it's more of creativity has been captured in ingenuity in option number D. So yet listen to it with a sympathetic heart. Or ideas. So I think option number D, because thoughts would not compare appropriately. Uh, D, find ingenuity, heart. What is righteous? Righteous is somebody who we can also look from the word, does the right, upholds the truth, does the right thing. That is the righteous. Basically following dharma, following the code of honor, code of being a gentleman, or the righteous. Let's read 49 also. This is all about preposition, so probably we'll be able to do it. There is much difficulty dash getting dash this place, and it is not possible to reach without the grace of the Lord. So let's solve it without looking at it. Any options? There is much difficulty in getting to this place, and it is not possible to reach it without the grace of. So there is much difficulty in option number A has it, D has it, E has it. Getting to this place, in and to, A and E has it. and it is not possible to reach it. Again, A has it, into it without the grace of. All right, let's sit down. So I have picked some questions to discuss. So we've discussed on reading comprehension, one question based on vocabulary, one question based on grammar. Let's also try and solve one question based on what we know as verbal reasoning or verbal ability. Basically, it's verbal reasoning, but uh, in specific grammar topic, but that sort of a question will appear in your VA section, the under VA RC section for a verbal ability. But it's very interesting. So let me scroll down. It's a photographed sheet. The photo has been taken in PDF format, uploaded. Many thanks to the institute. Everything that we can utilize. Yeah. I'm just checking if there's question is related to. So this is what I liked about this question. Interesting question. Standalone, no nonsense sort of. Question says, let's the question first. Identify the statement or statement that is are logically consistent with the content of the paragraph. We have something, those statements are logically consistent with the content of the paragraph. So this is also sort of a reading comprehension, but with slightly different approach. Okay? That's why I said that it will come under verbal reasoning and VA from CAT. The motivation of human beings towards their work is a subject matter that is at once simple as well as an extremely complicated matter. For a long time, economists, sociologists, as well as psychologists believed that a carrot and stick approach with monetary incentives playing the role of the carrot would be sufficient to goad employees towards achieving higher levels of performance. However, a number of recent studies and observations, especially dealing with the open source revolution, are placing on the table strong evidence suggesting that monetary incentives are only one part of the entire story of motivation through incentives. In a study conducted by a group of researchers at MIT, it was found that monetary incentives work well only in respect of tasks requiring mechanical skills. That is, those tasks not requiring much use of higher level cognitive abilities such as memorizing or problem solving. In fact, their study showed that setting high monetary incentives for tasks requiring cognitive abilities were more likely than not to produce adverse outcomes. Since this result flew straight in the face of the widely accepted body of knowledge on employee motivation, they conducted multiple experiments in different settings and countries to ensure that it was not a one-off result. The findings were the same in all repetition of the experiment. These studies appear to suggest that monetary incentives need to be provided only to such an extent as to take the minds of the employee off the issue of money and focus on other issues that are necessary to get the job done right. For instance, some experiments have shown that greater autonomy to employees and lowered interference from management and bosses is successful in driving the performance of employees working in cognitive skill intensive jobs. Now, what is the gist of this particular piece? It says that uh, in the earlier school of thought, in an older school of thought regarding the motivation of human beings towards their work, it was believed that the financial part, the remuneration part was the most important. That could only motivate. But it was found that monetary aspect worked, uh, that it was the most important aspect when it was related to the people involving mechanical skills. But when it came to the people who were using problem solving skills, who were using higher level cognitive skills in solving the problems, they found that monetary benefit only solved part of a problem, or after a point uh, the remuneration part or the compensation part stopped working, or in certain cases I showed it worked in the it worked contrary to the expectation. However, what was seen that if people who are working in in a job role which has high cognitive involvement, there was a high level of problem solving skills required, and there was a lot of intelligence is required there, independence and autonomy of working, uh, and freedom of doing the work they were doing, that sort of freedom brought in better results. So let's try and read what are the options. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to read it, and I'm also trying to explain it in simple words as to what does it mean. And this is exactly what you have to do when you are solving your. You have to think it in your mind, or you have to make summaries, short notes. We'll do that also in future. So let's read this. Let's read the options. Identify the statements that is are logically consistent with the content of the carrot stick approach essentially requires the use of rewards to get more of a desired behavior, whereas penalties lead to increased undesirable behavior. Nothing related to undesirable behavior was mentioned. Anything which has not been mentioned, and any option containing an idea which has not been mentioned, can simply drop it off. 2. Extending time and effort on design of monetary incentive is a wasteful exercise. Nothing with respect to the wastefulness of designing of monetary incentives or the financial compensation part was made. It is again not related to the passage, hence we can drop it off. So 1 and 2 are gone. So now all the options which involve 1 and 2, we can strike it off. Just by doing this, we know A has 1, B has 1, C has 2, D has 2. Automatically is the right answer here. So we need not even read 3, 4 and 5. This is how you solve. This is how you solve questions. So today there was no theory, there was only tricks and techniques. Still, for the joy of it, for the glory of it, let's read it. The study of the group of MIT researchers was a flawed exercise from the start. No, it was not flawed exercise. It is contrary. This option is contrary to the information mentioned. It was said that the MIT researchers were doing a right task. If you read here, from this line where my cursor is, the findings were same in all repetition of the experiment. So D is actually contrary. All right. Let's read 4. Definitely 4 and 5 are correct. We have already proved it, but still we'll read them. Let's see how they form the right answers. We've seen how they form wrong answers. Let's see how they form right answers. Very smart, There appears to be a need to reorient the existing paradigm prevalent in incentive design. This sort of can be inferred from them that yes, something of this sort was mentioned here, that we need to sort of redesign the incentive design. We need to sort of, where required, we can sort of only give the amount of financial compensation to the point that it removes it sort of stops the financial insecurity part in an employee. At the same time, we can sort of we can give the employee more autonomy, more freedom. Okay, then the productivity will improve. Let's read 5th. During the process of designing incentives, one should clearly delineate activities into those requiring mechanical skills and those requiring higher level cognitive skill, and design with separate sets of incentives and penalties. So yes, this is again consistent with what has been said in the passage, because it was said in the passage that the financial incentive aspect for for jobs which were mechanically intensive and for the jobs which were where employees were using their higher cognitive skills, in both the areas, the financial aspect, the monetary incentive factor, it was not following the same yardstick. It was different in both the areas. In the mechanical part, it was most important. The in the part in the areas where cognitive skills were used, it had an important, but it didn't have a major importance. So we'll have to delineate activity. We have to understand where mechanical skills are required and where high level cognitive skills are required, and then we design separate sets of incentives and penalties. So yeah, 4 and 5 are correct, 4 and 5 have been mentioned. So is the right, as we knew even after reading option number 1 and 2. So thank you very much. I think you sort of got the message, whatever we were discussing. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I'd also like you to subscribe and download and subscribe the Academy app, and use my code Saxena10. This class we haven't brought in any PPT. It was completely free of any PPT, so you can download and subscribe on Academy app to stay in touch. And yep, use my code Saxena10. You can choose any of the 5 offerings which I mentioned. Anything more than 6 months makes sense. So with an Academy subscription, you get live classes, you can interact with educator, live polls and leaderboard, test series and analysis, live doubt sessions. With my referral code Saxena10, you will get 10% off. Thank you very much.